Well, there's no question. It's going to be won at some point in history. It may not be, certainly will not be the next election. But at some point down the line, it's going to be won. And we need to be thinking now in terms of, what do we replace it with?
Well, let me just butt in there, Ed, because it could be now. We don't know. I mean, they might just be one bad step away from,
well, that's true.
As Henry Ford called, a revolution by morning, which I think would be a good thing. But go ahead. I mean, what do we replace them with? How do we propose an alternative to what the Federal Reserve has been doing all these years?
Well, I think it starts with an ideology, Jack. It's not particularly a step. What step do we take? How many votes is it going to take? What do we name the new agency? What are the wording? What's the wording going to be of the law? Those, nuts and bolts things are very important, but they all start with a philosophy. What is the proper function of the state? And if we don't start with that issue, then none of these other nuts and bolts are going to go together, right? And so, to me, the answer to the question is we've got to have a better appreciation for the concept of leaving people alone to direct their own lives and to not use coercion against anybody for any reason except, and be very clear on this, the only reason we can use coercion against somebody through the state is to protect the life, the liberty, and the property of the citizens. Nothing more. And I think once that concept is understood and appreciated, how wise it is, then everything else will go together quite easily, whether it's replacing the Federal Reserve System. If you can't force people to do anything except protect life, liberty, and property, then that means you can't force them to accept paper money that has nothing behind it, can you?
Well, there we have the sticky wicket, don't we? Because the urge to save the world is almost a false front to control it.
Yes.
As Edmund Burke, I believe, said. And these people, I think they actually believe they are saving our life and our liberty and, well, not our property, but our happiness.
I think there's a certain intellectual pride among some of them. They think that they're wise enough to know what's good for mankind, and they probably think that they're doing this for the betterment of the greater number. Somebody has to rule, they say. It might as well be them because they're smart. And, if they think that if you just leave it up to the common man, he's going to mess things up really bad. He might not realize the importance of having a mandated health care program, for example. He may not realize the importance of having to buy health insurance that covers only drugs and not vitamins. He may not figure that out. So that has to be forced down his throat. That's their mentality. They think they've got all the answers. And, of course, there's corruption in there, too, because once you have these people with the power to force others to do their bidding, then there's going to be backroom deals and handshakes. We might as well use this power to favor this commercial group over that one, and we'll give you a nice little commission under the table. And that's how all of this fraud creeps into government. Business
as usual. In other words, I think what I hear you saying is, and I'll put it in the words, I'll quote a famous dictator, I don't mind if there's a dictator as long as I'm the dictator. Because they're the good, benevolent dictator. And God forbid, I mean, this is another reason, Ed, why we don't want world government to centralize control into the hands of the few, as Brzezinski says in the Technotronic era, these people who are unrestrained by morals or values, because we don't know. Even if all these people were good, Ed, which, we know they're not, but if they were, we don't know if the next Hitler comes in and he's the leader of the world government. And think of how much damage he could do. In fact, that's exactly what Hitler wanted, and amazingly enough, that's just what happened.
Yeah, that's right. It's a question of not that we don't know that a dictator will come along. We do know. It's just a question of time.
All right.
And usually it's the fellow that's already there that we think is a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, even if you give these guys the benefit of the doubt, I mean, I'm just saying, down the road, if you're so clouded by the Kool-Aid that you think these people are good, maybe down the road you'll get a George Bush or a Jeb Bush or a Poppy Bush or again, trying to get to all sides. It seems to me what I hear you saying is we need a radical shift in the way we think about liberty, in the way we think about our country and freedom before we can start deliberating what should be done.
Exactly. We have to be clear on our principles. Because, if we haven't given that a lot of thought, we'll be making a lot of mistakes when we start dealing with issues. So I come back to that same theme, is that we have to be very clear that the proper function of the state is negative, not positive. It's not the great organizer of society. It's not supposed to do things for people. Its only function in the context of a free people, its only function is to protect the citizens from damage to their life, taking of their life, or damage to their property, stealing their property, or their liberty. That's it. And once it goes beyond that and starts to redistribute wealth or fix things up so that this group of people will be benefited or that group of people will have to pay for the benefits to somebody else, and starts, improving on the natural relationship between people according to some formula which they think is just. Once they are given that power, then it's like a runaway train. There's no place to stop it. It just goes until finally the system self-destructs.
Yeah, that's exactly what it seems like, the point where we're at right now. Ed Griffin is with us. G. Edward Griffin. He is the founder of a great organization that I belong to called Freedom Force International. We're going to talk a little bit about that before we're done as well. I just love hearing him talk about, how we can all be together in this without being a bunch of collectivists here, and how, Ed, I've used your decentralize and repeal battle cry here for years and years, and I want to give you credit for that because it is that simple. Last night I went to the 7-Eleven. I had a $100 bill, and I was trying to buy some sundries. And the guy was looking at it. I think it was Pakistani or something. He was looking at the bill, trying to figure out if it was real. And I said to him, well, it's real in a way, but it says, say, Federal Reserve note on it. So technically it isn't real. And instead of, getting the weird look I might have gotten a few years ago from saying something like that, he nodded and seemed to understand exactly what I meant.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, that's progress, I guess.
It sure is. How do we know if we've reached critical mass, or have we?
Good question. I'm thinking about that. What is critical mass? I don't know.
Take your time.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I think there is a point of critical mass, certainly. I don't know how you would measure it. I really don't know. I think it would be the point at which the collectivist opponents start to come unglued, and they start losing their grip over the power centers of society, I would think.
Over the power centers, not so much the people, because it seems in 2009 they lost control of the people.
Yes, although sometimes I think, Jack, we get a little myopic because we talk and move among people who think as we do. You go into certain parts of here in Los Angeles, and I can guarantee you could go through 1 million people and not find one that understands what we're talking about.
Yeah, in other words, we live in a bubble, and maybe we're not the best to determine that. But I get out and I talk to a lot of people who aren't, in our movement, let's say, and they seem to understand this stuff. The problem is, Ed, they just don't seem to care as much as we do.
Well, that takes me to my little 3-minute seminar on apathy.
I have 3 minutes before the next break.
Yeah, well, maybe this is a good time. I used to think that people were very apathetic. I became very upset with them. And I'd start to tell them things that, what's going on, what needs to be done, and I'd get that glazed look, and they'd kind of, look like they wanted to just get away from me because they didn't want to hear that. And I thought, how apathetic can people be? And then one day I realized that the problem was myself. It was me, not them. And the reason I came to that conclusion, I think, can best be explained by using an analogy. If we were in a rubber life raft in the middle of the ocean, and we're all alone, and we look over the edge of the life raft, and we see a little stream of bubbles coming up, we know that we're sinking. There's a hole in the raft. Well,
Ed, I gypped you out of 2 minutes here. I'm going to give those to you on the other side of this.
I'll come back to the raft in a minute.
Yeah, please. Folks, don't jump out of the raft yet. Stay with us on Deadline Live. G. Edward Griffin with us. We'll be right back after these important messages.